Black Annies. Black Annies is a legendary English hag said to haunt trees, caves, and terrified villages. Black Annies does not kick down doors or whisper riddles or play games. She waits. That's the first thing that messes with you. She's not a jump scare. She's a scheduling problem. This thing allegedly lived inside hollow oak trees or caves like the earth itself had a rotten tooth and she was the infection. Imagine being a medieval parent already stressed about plagues, famine, and taxes, and then realizing the forest has a grandmother who eats kids and wears their skin like seasonal outerwear. No wonder everyone stayed inside and invented porridge. Descriptions of her are aggressively unpleasant. Blue-black skin like bruised nightshade. Iron claws long enough to make scissors feel insecure. A face that reads less monster, more ancient mistake. She's not sleek. She's not elegant. She's the opposite of a fairy tale witch with a branding team. Black Annies feels like folklore's intrusive thought. The kind that shows up when humans start worrying about what happens if the woods stop pretending to be neutral. What makes her stick isn't just the violence. It's the domestic horror. She targets children, specifically children who wander, which means she's a walking PSA carved out of fear. She doesn't need to chase because curiosity does the work for her. And once she has you, the legend says she skins her victims and wears the hides as clothing. Not trophies. Clothes. That detail is unhinged. It implies routine. Like doing laundry. Like she's been doing this long enough that horror has become maintenance. She's also territorial. Black Annies doesn't roam the world. She claims a tree, a cave, a place, which gives her this deeply unsettling landlord energy. You didn't trespass into a monster's lair. You violated a lease you didn't know existed. That's worse. That means the land remembers her. That the landscape itself is complicit. And here's the thing that crawls under your skin if you sit with it too long. Black Annies doesn't feel like a villain invented for entertainment. She feels like a warning fossilized into a character. A manifestation of every child who vanished and every adult who needed a reason that wasn't guilt. She's fear wearing a name tag. You don't defeat Black Annies. You avoid her. You stay inside. You obey. That's the kind of horror that doesn't end when the story does. That's the kind that lingers like a superstition you pretend you don't believe in but still cross the street for. Black Annies Cave. Black Annies Cave is a rumored dwelling carved into fear folklore in limestone. The cave is where the story stops being metaphor and starts being a dare. Because caves are already psychological traps. You walk in and the world narrows. Sound dies. Light panics. Your brain starts whispering things it normally keeps polite. Now imagine locals pointing at one and saying that's where the hag lives. Not lived. Lives. Present tense. Like she's just down there reorganizing bones. Black Annies Cave isn't about architecture. It's about threshold anxiety. The idea that somewhere nearby is a hole that does not want you. That you could walk past it 100 times and be fine, but the one time you don't respect it, something ancient files a complaint. Caves swallow evidence. They erase footsteps. They turn screams into rumors. Perfect monster real estate. The folklore says she drags children back there. Which means the cave isn't just a home. It's a processing center. That's horrifying in a very bureaucratic way. Violence with infrastructure. And the fact that people kept telling this story implies something worse than belief. It implies familiarity. Like enough kids went missing that the imagination had to give the absence a shape. There's also this deeply medieval fear baked into it. Caves were mouths. The earth eating people back. Black Annies being inside one turns her into a parasite or a guardian depending on how generous you're feeling. And no one was feeling generous. She was the thing you told your kid about when you wanted them to survive. Trauma as childcare. What gets me is how the cave becomes more important than her face. You don't need to see Black Annies to be afraid. You just need to know where she might be. The fear becomes geographic. It maps itself onto the land. And suddenly the world feels hostile in specific coordinates. That's why the cave endures even when belief fades. You can stop believing in monsters, but you still hesitate at dark holes. You still feel watched by stone. Black Annies didn't need to be real forever. She just needed to teach the fear where to live. Black Annies Skin Cloak. Black Annies skin cloak is the grotesque garment made from the flayed hides of her victims. This is where the legend stops being a scary story and starts sounding like something a sleep-deprived brain should not be trusted with. The skin cloak detail is insane. Completely unnecessary. And that's why it works. Black Annie's doesn't just kill. She repurposes. She turns people into fabric. That's not rage. That's craft. Think about the implication. Skinning takes time. It takes precision. It takes a level of calm that is deeply disturbing. This isn't a monster acting on instinct. This is a creature with a routine. Somewhere between butcher and tailor. The cloak suggests pride, utility, maybe even warmth. Horror folklore rarely gives monsters hobbies, and this one accidentally gave her fashion. And wearing skin isn't about disguise here. She's not trying to blend in. No one is mistaking Black Annie's for a friendly neighbor. This is dominance, carrying your victims with you, making them part of your silhouette, like trophies that still remember being human. That's psychological warfare on a mythic scale. There's also something painfully symbolic about it. Children vanish and the fear doesn't. It sticks around. It wraps itself around the community. The skin cloak feels like grief turned wearable. Loss that won't stay buried. Every time someone imagines her walking through the woods, she's wearing proof that the woods won. It's also quietly about identity. Black Annie's doesn't have a fixed look because she's literally constructed from others. She's an amalgamation of absence. A walking collage of what's been taken. That makes her less of a character and more of a moving consequence. And yes, it's horrifying, but it's also darkly ironic. For a creature associated with cold caves and hollow trees, she solved insulation with murder. That's folklore efficiency at its worst. No magic spell. No cursed artifact. Just skin, which makes it feel uncomfortably plausible in a way no dragon ever could. The cloak lingers because it's intimate. Teeth are scary. Claws are expected. Clothing made of people is personal. It crosses a line from threat to violation. Black Annie's isn't just ending lives. She's erasing boundaries between self and other. That's why the image doesn't fade. It crawls. Black Annie's iron claws. Black Annie's iron claws are her signature weapons, described as long, curved, and inescapable. Iron claws are such a specific choice. Not bone, not wood, iron, cold, forged, heavy. The kind of thing that implies permanence. You don't grow iron. Someone had to imagine it being made. Which means at some point fear upgraded her from animal to tool user. That's a promotion you don't want your monster to earn. Claws already mean violence, but iron claws mean deliberation. They don't break. They don't rot. They last longer than flesh. That matters in folklore. It turns her from a passing nightmare into a fixture. Iron is what you use when you want something to stay exactly the way it is. There's also the cultural anxiety packed into iron. Medieval people respected it, feared it, used it to control the world. Giving Black Annie's iron claws is like admitting that the same material used to build civilization can be turned back on it. The tools don't care who holds them. And those claws aren't just for killing. They're for grabbing, dragging, pulling children out of light and into places without names. That's a very specific terror. Being seized by something stronger that doesn't hurry. That has all the time in the world and no reason to rush. Psychologically, the claws are worse than teeth. Teeth belong in a mouth. Claws belong on hands. Hands imply intention. Hands imply choice. Black Annie's reaches for you. That's unbearable. It suggests recognition. Like you weren't random. Like you were selected. There's also something almost absurdly cruel about iron claws on a hag that lives in trees and caves. They'd be loud. They'd scrape. They'd announce her presence with metal on stone. Which means if you hear her, it's already too late. Sound becomes a countdown. And once again, the legend refuses to comfort you with rules. No weakness. No clever trick. Just iron hands and patience. Black Annie's doesn't need speed. She needs reach. That's enough. Black Annie's tree dwelling. Black Annie's tree dwelling is the belief that she lived inside hollow oak trees like a parasite in wood. This is the part where the forest stops being a backdrop and starts being an accomplice. A hollow tree is already unsettling. It looks alive but sounds empty. You knock and the echo feels wrong. Now add the idea that something is inside it. Watching through cracks. Breathing with the trunk. Suddenly nature isn't peaceful, it's hosting something. Trees were supposed to be safe symbols. Shelter. Shade. Growth. Black Annie's hijacks that symbolism and shoves a corpse into it. The idea that she lives inside an oak tree feels like folklore's way of saying the world can lie to you. The thing that looks stable might be hollowed out and angry. And it's such a quiet horror. No lair door, no bones at the entrance. Just a tree you've passed 100 times. That's the genius of it. You don't fear the forest as a whole. You fear one specific tree. Which is worse because now paranoia has a home address. This also ties directly into why the legend stuck around for parents. Trees are where kids play, where they hide, where they climb. Turning a tree into a monster's apartment is a psychological landmine. It doesn't tell children the world is dangerous. It tells them the fun parts are. There's also something grotesquely intimate about living in a tree. The sap, the insects, the rot. Black Annie's isn't separate from decay. She's marinating in it, becoming part of the ecosystem in the worst way. Not a predator passing through but a tenant fused to the place. And imagine the sound design of that existence. Wind through branches, scraping iron claws inside wood, breathing synced with creaking bark. If you ever wondered why people hear things in forests, this is why. Folklore taught the brain to listen for threats even when none are visible. The tree dwelling turns Black Annie's into a living landmark. She's not a story you travel to. She's something you accidentally grow up near. That's a different kind of fear. One that doesn't end with distance. One that says evil might already be rooted. Black Annie's Child Snatcher. Black Annie's Child Snatcher is her role as a cautionary figure used to control behavior. This is where the legend becomes brutally honest about its purpose. Black Annie's exists to scare children into obedience. Period. She's not subtle about it. Wander off and you're gone. No redemption arc. No rescue party. Just absence. What makes this darker is how effective it must have been. You don't need to see her. You just need to imagine her. The threat becomes internalized. Kids start policing themselves. That's the real horror. Fear outsourced into imagination. And adults benefited from that. Fewer lost kids. Less risk. The story does the work. Black Annie's becomes a disciplinary system with claws. That doesn't make her less frightening. It makes her more unsettling. She's a tool of survival built out of terror. There's also an undercurrent of guilt here. When children disappeared for real, the story gave people somewhere to put the blame. Not illness, not accidents, not neglect. A hag did it. A monster took them. Grief wrapped in narrative so it wouldn't tear the community apart. Psychologically, she's a stand-in for the wilderness itself. The unknown beyond the village. The idea that the world does not care how small you are. Black Annie's is the face put on that truth so it could be spoken aloud. And the fact that she specifically targets children makes the legend sting longer. It's not fair. It's not balanced. It's not heroic. It's just loss. That's why she never became a fairy tale villain you defeat. You don't defeat hunger. You manage it. Black Annie's doesn't teach bravery. She teaches caution. She teaches staying close. She teaches fear as a survival instinct. Which is why even now the idea of something watching from the trees still works. That lesson never expired. Black Annie's regional variants. Black Annie's regional variants are the shifting local versions of the hag across English folklore. This is where the legend starts to fracture like a face seen through bad glass. Depending on where you grew up, Black Annie's isn't exactly the same creature. Different names, different details, same dread. That's not inconsistency. That's evolution under pressure. In some areas she's called Black Agnes. In others she blurs into other hags and night women like folklore couldn't decide which nightmare deserved the spotlight. But the bones stay the same. Blue-black skin, long claws, child eating, living too close for comfort. It's like every village tweaked the recipe just enough to fit their anxieties. That's how you know this thing mattered. Stories that don't matter don't mutate. They stay static. Black Annie's adapted. She picked up regional accents. She learned new hiding spots. She became whatever parents needed her to be. That makes her less like a single character and more like a shared hallucination. Some versions emphasize her as a boogie figure. Others lean hard into cannibal witch. In a few tellings she's almost mythic. In others she's basically a feral neighbor with a cave. And that flexibility is terrifying. It means she isn't bound by canon. There is no official version to outgrow. She slips through definitions. There's also something deeply unsettling about how communities personalized her. This is our Black Annie's. She lives there. Not abstract. Not distant. Ours. That localization turns fear into property. It roots the horror in soil you can point to. And once fear has an address, it's harder to dismiss. Psychologically, this is folklore crowdsourcing trauma. Everyone adds what scares them most. Claws get longer. Hunger gets meaner. The story absorbs whatever the community can't process. Over time, Black Annie's becomes less a monster and more an archive of dread. And notice how none of the versions soften her. She never becomes misunderstood. She never gets a tragic backstory that redeems her. She remains sharp, ugly, unforgiving. That consistency says something. People weren't interested in empathizing with this fear. They wanted it contained and named. Black Annie's survives through variation because fear itself is regional. What scares one village is different from the next. She simply wore the mask that fit. And the fact that she still feels coherent after all that distortion is proof of how strong the core idea was. Something old, something close, something that takes and never gives back. Black Annie's modern echo. Black Annie's modern echo is the lingering psychological footprint she leaves in modern horror. She doesn't show up in blockbuster movies with CGI budgets and tragic monologues. She doesn't need to. Black Annie's already won. She lives in the negative space. In the way forests still feel wrong at night. In the way hollow places make your stomach tighten for no reason. Every creepy hag in horror owes her rent. Every story where the land itself feels predatory is borrowing her silhouette. You see her in modern folk horror. In analog horror. In that specific flavor of unease where nothing moves but you still feel watched. That's her. That's the echo. She also shows up in how we scare ourselves now. The internet loves uncanny figures that don't chase. That wait. That feel like they've always been there. Black Annie's perfected that centuries ago. She's the original background threat. The monster you don't see but plan around. There's a reason people still latch onto stories about cursed trees, abandoned places, and rural horror. Urban monsters can be avoided. You lock a door. You call someone. Rural horror is different. It tells you there is nowhere else. Black Annie's belongs to that category. She is the fear of being small in a world that does not care. And she's weirdly funny in the darkest way. Not because she's a joke, but because of how blunt she is. No riddles, no deals, just hunger and patience. In an era of overly complex villains, she feels almost refreshing. Like an ancient error message that still pops up because it was never fixed. Psychologically, she represents something we still haven't outgrown. The fear that safety is temporary. That the rules change once you step too far away. That childhood isn't protected by magic. Only by proximity and luck. Black Annie's was never about monsters. She was about boundaries. That's why she doesn't need reboots. Every time someone feels uneasy near a tree line at dusk, she's there. Every time a parent worries when a kid wanders too far, she's there. Not as a literal hag, but as a pressure. A warning hum. Black Annie's doesn't end. She degrades into instinct. She becomes the reason you hurry home. The reason you don't look too long into dark spaces. The reason folklore still works even when belief doesn't. Thank you so much for listening and following along with the story. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you won't miss out on more thrilling and exciting stories coming up. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep creating.